Warning, the Stone Age Gamer includes a lot of bad language. Cover your mother ears.
Good evening and welcome to the Stone Age Gamer Podcast. I am Kris Randazzo and joining me tonight is bullshit ending requirement Dan Ryan.
Why don't the monsters under your bed eat ghosts?
I don't know why.
Because they taste like sheet. That's possibly the best fucking joke I've ever heard. I've been waiting all week to fucking share it. It's so funny. So fucking good.
Oh boy. Well, with the spooky season fully upon us, Dan and I have decided to rank the Ghosts and Goblins series. And yes, the ghosts taste like sheet.
It tastes like sheet.
Which version of this legendarily difficult series reigns supreme? Put on your strawberry boxers because the Stone Age Gamer Podcast starts now.
Man, I'm glad that went over as well as I thought it was gonna. It's so fun. It's the funniest fucking joke I've ever heard. Oh my god. Oh.
Hi everyone, this is episode 433. It's the week of October 14th, 2022. Actually, no, that's today. 21,
17th.
October 21st.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, it comes out on, yeah. It
comes out on Friday,
release on Monday. Comes out a week from today.
It's the week of October 21st, 2022.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. Today's October 14th when we're recording it. So when they're listening to it, it's going to be the week of October 21st.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I got Casey Jones. It's all that matters. Yeah, it's going to be one of those nights. How you doing, Kris? I'll take over.
I'm doing okay. I don't know. It's been a stressful week, but it's over. I just have to survive. I have to survive the weekend. So I'm just trying to think of like the things that I need to do to get through the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Just, I like video games, Dan.
I do too.
Have
you been playing any games?
I've been playing games, but I've also been enjoying some really good entertainment this week.
Oh,
I have to say it's been a good week for entertainment. Let's see. The first thing, Resident Alien's just been great. But the first thing was this week's episode of Andor.
I have not started Andor yet because we were waiting to finish She-Hulk.
Oh man!
And I can't wait.
This episode was, Andor, the first, 2 episodes are a bit of a slow burn.
Okay.
But then it gets there.
Were they, Book of Boba Fett slow burn? Or,
Oh, no. The
okay.
Quality entirely is just way higher. I mean, as in not a lot of things are happening. It's a lot of setup. Whereas Book of Boba Fett was all right, is this a lot of setup? What am I looking at here?
What the fuck are you even setting up?
He's setting up some slow-ass car chases, what you setting up. God, I love that show. I fucking love that show. I love Star Wars so much. But no, Andor feels pretty different, but man, this week was killer.
That's good.
And then the She-Hulk finale.
Oh my god. You loved it? I fucking loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was so smart and so funny, and just. I
mean, obviously, the people who have always hated this show completely hated it.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly who this was taking the piss out of.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, this was the most She-Hulk ass ending that they could have possibly done. I mean,
for sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there an issue where she beats a villain by just crumpling up the page that he's on and throwing it away?
Oh yeah, there's so much of that in the comic run. That is just brilliant and interesting and just so fucking good. Yeah, this was great.
I smash bad I smash the fourth wall bad endings, and sometimes Matt Murdock. That shit was hysterical. The delivery. Oh my god, Tatiana Maslany is a fucking treasure. I'm so glad she did this.
She is perfect casting. Legitimately, when I say this, she is as good in this role and as perfect for this role as Robert Downey Jr. was for Iron Man Tony Stark.
I would say that I would agree with that connection there. I mean, look, Orphan Black was enough to sell me on this woman for the rest of my life. I mean,
sure,
she is an astoundingly good actor, and she just crushed this series. And as I'm watching the whole ending come together, I'm like, oh yeah, this is dumb. And then she's like, this is dumb. And the way Daredevil showed up at the end, it made no sense, and I loved every bit of it.
He just pops out of the sky, on the lawn.
Where was he? Who cares? I'm here to help.
I'm here to help. Jen. It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah,
and the fucking setup for Planet Hulk.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about Scar's design.
But we got confirmation that Hulk fucks, and that is super fun.
That is true. That doesn't surprise me, but yeah, that's that's certainly something. I'm not sure what the thought process was behind making the hair look like that, but whatever. I don't really care.
It's kind of like a warrior Buddhist monk kind of look. I don't know. I was digging it.
Didn't do it for me, but I didn't really care. It was,
yeah.
I'm fine with everything that they've got cooking right now. So, hooray! And then we watched the most recent episode of House of the Dragon. And are you caught up on that? Did you give up on that already? Or?
Yeah. This, man.
It was nice to see the adults act like adults.
Yeah.
That was
Paddy
nice.
Constantine, or however the fuck, Constantine, however you say his last name.
Yeah,
that dude was
awesome.
putting in fucking work.
Yeah.
On this episode. I still don't think I like the show or care where any of it is going, but man, he did a good job.
Yeah, he was great. I understand why they showed so much of that effect on his face.
Yeah.
I could have stood to look at it a little bit less because it was fucking disgusting.
It was.
No, he was great. I kind of like the two dark-haired kids, and
they were getting a little better.
And the blonde kids are shit, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
The one with the eye patch looks like, wow, this guy is going to be fucking trouble. I feel
he looked a lot like the fucking dude who was Emilia Clarke's brother in the first season.
Yeah.
The kid from the House of Blood in the Doctor Who that episode, or the Family Blood.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a very confusing show. Everyone's named the same damn thing. Everyone's banging their cousins and uncles and all that jazz. It's hard to root for anybody, but at least those two kids who I was finally okay, they don't seem like bad people.
Yeah.
All right, I can root for them.
I can kind of get behind it. The one thing that really bothered me about that episode, and I audibly groaned when we were watching it, it got to the finale. And Alicent leans over as Viserys is whispering bullshit, and he says the thing about the Song of Ice and Fire or whatever or Fire and Ice, whatever the fuck it is. Ice and Fire, right? That's the way it goes.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Ice and Fire. Yeah.
And she, in that moment, she's like, I understand, and it undoes all of the progress that she made with Rhaenyra in that episode, and her becoming but what really
does
why
it? Because she said I understand, and I audibly said, well, that makes one of us.
Well,
because I didn't understand anything he said at all.
That was that was why I groaned out, and I was like, oh god, while we were watching, because the way they set that character up, Viserys had to be sitting in that bed. She said it was 6 years since they had fucking been to Dragonstone, or from Dragonstone to the Red Keep and whatever. So Viserys, he didn't just fall into that condition yesterday. He's been in bed mumbling bullshit for years at this point. But this was the particular moment where Alicent was like, no, this one is a moment of clarity. This is, I get it. Let me undo everything and go on a psycho bitch rampage. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's so fucking contrived and stupid. I don't know how you get to the civil war that they have to have happen. That is the next season of this show. But like, I just thought that was such a bad way to get there. Like,
I
just
didn't even realize that's where they were going. I thought that where we're going from here is like, well, the kids are going to cause all the problems now. The adults are going to kind of sort of get along, but the kids are just going to be awful, and that's how we're going to get to the bad places.
It ends up in, and God, I think they said they have like 4 seasons of this show planned. And
that's what George R. R. Martin said. He said, I need 4 seasons to get this done the way I want it to.
But, like, then why the fuck did you skip all those time jumps? God damn it, you could have told me some of the story, so I cared about some of these fucking people. The whole piece of business is just, it feels rushed, but taking way too long to get to where it's going all at the same time. So I'm very frustrated by this show, because I want to love it. I really do.
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting out of it all that I need to because of how happy I am with specifically with Andor right now. But I am also kind of looking forward to starting Lord of the Rings. So that
yeah, like I am actually looking forward to starting that as well, because I just want House of the Dragon to be over. I
feel like that's going to be the high fantasy that I want right now. And
I hope so.
Karen made a really good point about House of the Dragon, where like, not only are there not really any characters to root for, but part of what made Game of Thrones so interesting was all the different perspectives. This is really just the one family.
Yeah.
And like the different sects of this one family. Whereas Game of Thrones was like all these different families and kingdoms and stuff. It was so much more of a globe sprawling story, and this is much more insular, and it's kind of harder to get invested in this specific family's bullshit because
when there's no one to like.
Yeah, there's no one to like, and it's like the stakes just seem so much lower.
Well, and that's kind of the challenge that they run to out of necessity, because ultimately, as much as we're like, oh, but this and that and intrigue and whatever, like, I know that this ends with fucking Arya stabbing the Night King. I know
so
that Jon
you need to do is make likable characters. That's what you need to do.
That's all you had to do.
It doesn't matter if we know where the story's going. Make it an entertaining story, and I don't give a shit.
Right.
Like,
I just want tits and dragons, and I want to like the people. I want to like the tits and the dragons.
I want to like the people they're attached to.
It's just, and it's interesting because I watch Screen Crush after like after House of the Dragon and She-Hulk and whatever. And
yeah, we've talked about this. I watch Nerdist.
Yeah. But a lot of times they'll cut in clips of other shows, and when they're doing House of the Dragon, they'll cut in clips from Game of Thrones, and usually it's something that Tyrion said, but it'll be, anything that can make a quick little haha, that's a funny edit. The job that Patty did playing Viserys this week, I think, is the first time that any actor on House of the Dragon has approached the quality of acting that was on every fucking week of Game of Thrones. Because that show was acted to a fucking T. Like,
I would agree with that.
And I don't think the actors in House of the Dragon are doing anywhere near the job that the people on Game of Thrones did. And maybe I'm fucking crazy, and maybe people are like, well, your standards are too high or whatever. It's just a very frustrating show.
Now, I forget, did we talk about Werewolf by Night last week, or did I not watch that?
We did not,
yet?
and I still haven't seen it.
Wow, that surprises me.
Yeah, it's just Tiff's been working, Like, with her new
yeah.
job, she doesn't get home until 7, and this week at work has been long for me, and it's been long for her, and she's a vet tech now. So, like, her vet that she works for will not do, like, if a patient brings an animal in to be euthanized, the doctor will not do it. He can't. And that's not actually all that uncommon, because it's an injection. It's not like, you don't have to have a special skill, you know what I mean? Like, you're putting an injection into the animal and they go off to sleep. So, like, yesterday, Tiff had to do 3. You know what I mean? Like,
boy.
And that's a rough position to be. So then she comes home and she's like, I just need to veg for tonight. You know what I mean? I don't need to watch something I care about. We're just going to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine again. You know?
That's fair.
Yeah.
You're going to fucking love this.
If the trailer alone was anything like the actual show in just like tone or style,
good.
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm good.
This
is going to be my favorite Marvel thing ever.
I love the shit out of it. I thought it was so wonderful. And
yeah,
speaking of vegging and the MCU, I think I'm tagging out of my MCU rewatch. I made it to Loki, and the problem is I'm no longer capable of background watching any of this. It's taken me
too good.
It's too recent, and it's like I saw it the one time, and like I started having this problem right away. It took me forever to get through Falcon and the Winter Soldier because I got like 3 episodes in, and then every time I had it on, I could not background watch it. I'm just watching it. I'm like, okay, but I'm not getting anything done, so I need to stop. and like, I started Loki.
It's just
and I was
so
like,
good.
I can't background watch this show. I just can't. I just like.
Yeah.
I would have my phone on in the shower to have things on in the background, and I'm just standing there in the shower staring at my phone like, all right, this is fucking stupid. I can't. I got to tag out of this.
I'm not even like cleaning myself. I'm just getting wet.
I made it up to phase 4.
And not just because Tom Hiddleston is on the TV.
So I decided to switch over to a Scrubs. And I haven't rewatched Scrubs in a long time. That show makes me very happy. I know you don't really
not
like
a Scrubs
that show,
guy.
but
I'm just not. I feel like I really should be. It's like my humor and the whole thing, and man, not.
But anyway, you asked originally before I went on this whole tirade about TV shows, video games, and it has been an interesting week for video games. I finished Monkey Island, and
so lay it on me.
All right,
because I'm not going to play it. So.
I was struggling with the how to review this game because I really did enjoy playing it. I never did get used to the art style. I stand by through to the very end that all the human characters look fucking hideous. I don't like it at all. But everything else was gorgeous, which was such a problem for me. Like, it was so uneven. Like, everything worked except the stuff that really didn't fucking work. Like, I opened my review by saying Monkey Island Return to Monkey Island is a complicated game. It's simultaneously perfect for newcomers, yet tailor-made for old fans, strikingly beautiful, yet borderline hideous, and emotionally impactful, yet somewhat insultingly shallow.
Wow.
And that's referring to the ending, which really it threw me for a very big loop. So big fat hairy spoilers, okay? Mm-hmm. Anybody who does not want to hear, Evan, throw the spoiler alert in here. Anybody who doesn't want to hear the ending of Return to Monkey Island, this is your chance to back out. Okay, we good?
Oh, good. Excuse me, I'm burping. Sorry, I'm drinking.
Obviously. So you're trying to find the secret of Monkey Island this whole time, and the secret is apparently locked in a treasure chest inside of a lockbox that you need all these keys to get into. And LeChuck is teamed up with Captain Madison, this other rival pirate that's in the game, to try and open up this treasure chest and get the secret before you do. So you finally get all the keys you need. You go to open the lockbox. you wind up going through these catacombs to get to LeChuck because he got into it before you or whatever. You're going through the catacombs, solving all these great puzzles, and then I'm going to rewind for real quick and reiterate that I didn't love Monkey Island 2.
Right.
And I thought the game was way more obtuse than the first game. Like, a lot of the puzzles I just never would have figured out in a billion years without looking things up. And I really didn't care for the ending, which was just like, what the hell? Like, you're going through stuff, you're fighting LeChuck, and then all of a sudden, LeChuck is your brother, and your kid's at a carnival, and LeChuck looks at the screen and his eyes glow, so is it a spell? What the hell's happening? And then the game just stops. Right. And I hated that because, like, it just seemed like it answered nothing. There was zero closure to it, and it didn't make any sense, and it was kind of frustrating to think that LeChuck was really Guybrush's brother, because that doesn't really make any sense. It just seems...
It just doesn't work. It seems easy.
It just doesn't work. It seems easy. So the beginning of Return to Monkey Island solves that. It resolves that. That's the beginning of Return to Monkey Island, is resolving that. And the resolution to that is that wasn't LeChuck and Guybrush as kids. That's Guybrush's kids. And Guybrush was telling a story to them. And it almost kind of makes sense in just enough of a way for me to say, all right, cool. That's good enough for me. And so the main conceit of Return to Monkey Island is that Guybrush is telling his one kid the story of how he found the secret of Monkey Island. So you get to the end of the game, and you're getting ready to go face off against LeChuck, and you open up a door in these catacombs under Monkey Island, and the door takes you to the alleyway in Melee Island, just like it did in the end of Monkey Island 2. And it's like, my heart sank, like my stomach just sank. It was like, what the hell is going on right now? And then you walk out, and it's an amusement park. Everything is an amusement park. Melee Island is an amusement attraction, and Elaine, your wife, is there asking if you're ready to go, and you look at all the characters and LeChuck, and they're all animatronics. It's fake. Everything has been fake. None of this happened. This was just Guybrush, who was a flooring inspector, going to an amusement park and then telling his kids stories like it was all part of his imagination. It wasn't real. And now I understand that it's Monkey Island. Of course it's not real. Even like by the rules set up in the first one, like they're aware they're in a video game, but like it felt cheap because it didn't conclude anything, and it was real to Guybrush. It was real to the character in the game, and that's by the established rules set up in the universe. It just took all of the meaning out of anything, like not even meaning per se, like because they're all so goofy. It's not like they're super heartfelt or anything like that. Yeah, it was just like it took all sense of sense out of what came previously by saying like it never happened. It was all just your character's imagination, and it felt it really rubbed me the wrong way. Like you just basically erased everything that happened. You erased all of everything that happened in all the Monkey Island games by saying, no, it never actually happened. It was just some dude imagining that it was happening. So, like, these stories never actually happened to Guybrush. He's been making them up based on being at an amusement park. And that, like, really sort of cheapened everything to me. Now, this is where I got... I don't think
I have any other response to that other than, But
if that was all it was, then it would be easy to be like, yeah, this ending ruins this game, and that's kind of that's a real chore. Except what happens after that is really quite sweet. So it gets back to Guybrush sitting on the bench with his kid, and his kid starts complaining about how this ending is stupid. And like, just like the ending of Monkey Island 2, you just yelled at me for making up that ending of Monkey Island 2, but he's saying you can't just make up the ending to things. What was the secret of Monkey Island? Now, there was a great joke where you go to the treasure chest that had the secret of Monkey Island in it, and of course, it has a fucking t-shirt in it that says, I found the secret of Monkey Island, and it was this stupid t-shirt. That's a great joke and a great callback to the first game. That's fine. But you then have these different options depending on, like, how you explain what the secret of Monkey Island was to your kid.
Okay.
It sets off this different conversation with him about, life and things like that, and just what we do to get by, and how important imagination is, and things like that. And then, like, Elaine takes the kid, saying they found, like, some map, they're going to go try to do something. And then Guybrush just kind of sits on a bench and looks off into the distance. And it was really effective. It was really well done and sweet. And I loved and hated it at the same time. I had such a complicated feeling about it. And then afterwards, when you get back to the main menu, there's a note from the developers basically explaining what they did. Like saying, the first game was this lightning in a bottle situation. The second game was about a team that really had no idea how to follow something like that up. And then a bunch of other stuff happened that we weren't involved in. And this was the story we wanted to tell, and it was apparently always supposed to be fake. I don't care if you say it was always supposed to be fake. It wasn't. That changed. It wasn't fake in the first game, and that was the one that meant something to me. Right. And I know that apparently it was always some sort of plan that it was always supposed to, Monkey Island was always supposed to just be an amusement park, and Guybrush was just at an amusement park and living out a fantasy. But I hate that. I genuinely hate that. But I respect that they followed through with it, and that they followed through with it so well. Like, it was really an effective ending. I just hated it. Just like the art style. It was very effective, but I hated it.
But I hated it. Yeah, so, that is... Man, I don't know.
I exactly. I don't know what to make of it. I did the best I could with my review. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 because the actual act of playing the game was great. The writing is great. The voice acting is great. The UI is great. The way it handles puzzle solving. Maybe the puzzles were a little bit too easy, but I was playing on the easy mode. I know that the hard mode basically adds, it just adds like extra steps, makes the puzzles more complex. And I wouldn't mind trying that someday. But the art direction, I admire and respect that they stuck to it, but I don't think it was a good idea. And I really don't like, I think the ending's cheap. I asked John after we beat the game, I said, well, what did you think? And he was like, well, I liked the game, but we never got to fight LeChuck. I was like, that's a very good point. We never actually got to fight. We never got to fight the last boss because there wasn't one. And like, I know that's not really like the thing of these games, like fighting the last boss. But in the first two games, you do actually have to beat LeChuck. That's the thing. You beat the bad guy. And in this one, you don't. It just stops. It just you got done solving these interesting puzzles in the catacombs under Monkey Island, and then instead of facing LeChuck, you open a door and find out that everything you've been doing is fake. And it was like, even Mario 2, you had to beat Wart, Before you found out it was a dream, you still had to beat Wart to get to that pack. This was nothing. There was no climax. It was like blue balls. It was Monkey Island blue balls.
That's real interesting.
And
I wonder if it would work better if they had come out in a more rapid succession.
I think no matter what, I would have hated this ending.
Yeah.
I think no matter what, when you tell me that something that happened didn't happen, like the first Secret of Monkey Island is just one of my all-time favorite stories. I fucking love that game. I love the ridiculousness of it. And you know what? Another thing that I struggled with in this game was Elaine's character. She just seemed so vapid in this game. Like,
yeah.
Clearly she was smart, but like in the first game, she was formidable. Like, she saved herself in the first game. Like, that was kind of a whole thing, was like, and even the beginning of the second game, you're down in a pit, and like the very beginning of the game is her basically coming to your rescue. Like, that's kind of the relationship. And in this one, she just loves Guybrush and wants to cure scurvy. I don't know, it just, she seemed so much more hollow. Whereas, like, it was so cool going back to Melee Island and having it be changed as much as it was, you know, like the Scum Bar was remodeled and kind of like disheveled. The one shop closed and turned into a fish market. The Wally from Monkey Island 2 opened up a shop where the men of low moral fiber were standing in front of before. The voodoo shop was going out of business. The clock was still stuck at the same hour as it was in the original game. Like, there was graffiti on the walls. It was like the place had come under a bit of disrepair, but it was like you could tell that time had passed, and it was neat to be back there. And then, like, going back to Monkey Island, even as short as it was like, time had passed. I liked the idea of it being a return and not like just literally everything's exactly how you remember it. Shit's changed. And I thought that was really cool. And then it was like, it just kind of fell apart. And that made me sad because I love these locations. I love this game. It'd be like if I played through, you know, the Zelda games, and then all of a sudden, like, the fifth Zelda game, Ganon just looks at the camera and be like, never mind, this was all a book that I was reading to my kid, none of it happened, the end. Like, what?
Yeah, that's a little weird, I guess.
Yeah, kind of cheapened the whole thing for me. And
because you're right, like, it can be done well.
Yeah, it can be, and that I suppose that, like, we were just talking about She-Hulk. That didn't ruin shit because it was kind of baked in, the whole fact that there was fourth wall breaking from the get-go. It was just kind of baked into the whole thing, and that absolute ridiculousness of the main character writing her own ending, that was fine because it didn't undo anything that came before it. And that's where I kind of have a real problem with it. Like, if it was just saying that this game, this story was based on some sort of amusement park or whatever, but like, that's not what it was saying. It was saying that Guybrush is a flooring inspector that imagined being a pirate all this whole time. And that's like, feels gross to me. I don't like it.
That's a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, I'm sorry. That sucks.
Yeah, I'm still really glad the game exists. I still had a really good time playing it. It was magnificent in a lot of ways. Just the ending really just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I understand it. I just don't like it. So, anyways, on to happy news, which is everything else.
Literally everything else.
Everything else. John and I, we got to the inverted castle in Symphony of the Night, which was so freaking awesome. Cool. He's been asking about the clock tower the whole time we're playing this game. And I was like, no, we got to get the bad ending first. He's like, what do you mean bad ending? I'm like, watch. So we kill Richter and we get the bad ending. He's like, okay, so what do we do? And I was like, well, we have to do a little bit more exploring. We got the spike breaker armor, and he's like, we can go to that room with the spikes in it. I was like, yeah. And I found the ring. And I found the ring, the silver ring, and the gold ring. And then I just sat there on the inventory screen, and I'm like, what do we do, John? And he looked at it. He's looking at the rings. It's like, where clock? in Tower. We're in Clock Tower. Let's go to the Clock Tower and wear the rings. It's like, yes, you got it, man. And then we get there, we go to the Clock Tower, we go underneath it and have the conversation with Maria, and it will never not bother me. How the fuck did she get in there? You gotta wear these 2 rings, and you open up a secret passageway that leads to a room with a giant room inside of it, and she's just chilling there. What is she doing there? It doesn't matter because it's so cool. She gives you the glasses, and like they say, they unveil like I forget how she words it, but they show evil spells or whatever. I'm like, where have we encountered an evil spell, John? And he goes through like a litany of things. It took him a few minutes to figure this out, and I didn't push him or anything. And eventually, he came to the conclusion like, what if we wear them when we fight Richter? And I was like, you got it.
That's
we went
awesome.
there, we beat the orb over Richter's head, saw the not ending, and oh boy, just getting to the inverted castle felt really good. Seeing all the new enemies he thought was really cool, but I haven't been able to play it since. You know, it's been things have been going on since I think Wednesday. So like we missed Thursday, he had a doctor's appointment, and then today he was with my mom. So it's been 2 days since we've been able to play, and I've just been itching to play more Symphony, but I don't want to play any of it without him because he's been watching the whole time and he's really into it. So
now you got to get him watching the Netflix show.
I don't think he's quite ready for that yet.
Nah, what I love about that moment so much, it's so clever, right? It's a bad ending, to be sure, but at least it is an ending. Like, if you never figured the rest of it out,
yeah,
it's okay. It's not the worst ending in the world, and it's only a bad ending because, like, we know what else there is.
Yeah,
right?
and, like, I mean, I always assumed there was more because, like, you beat Richter and then everything's sad, and I'm like, I never got to fight Dracula, and Richter was kind of a pushover. What am I missing here? And then, like, oh, I'm halfway through the game.
Yeah, like that, and that's the best part, because how many times have you gotten to the end of a game, you're like, fuck, man, I'm really sad that this is over. And Igarashi was like, I got you, boo. You're only halfway there. And you're like, fuck, yes.
The only time I can think of that happening before as effective was Link to the Past. The first time I played Link to the Past, finally got to Aghanim, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe it's over this soon, though. Like, this seems early to be fighting the last boss. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me that, like, I go to the Dark World for, like, 15 seconds. Like, really? They made this entire Dark World map and there's nothing. Like, boy, it would be great if I could explore that. Oh, well. Like, what a naive idiot I was back then. Because it was so obvious that we were nowhere in the game, but I believed I was about to beat the game at the time.
Sure.
And then I finally beat him, and I got sucked into the Dark World. I'm like, what? Ganon shows, like, the shadow of Ganon shows up, and I'm like,
dope.
Come to booga booga booga. Oh wait, no, the shadow of Ganon wasn't until the end of the game, but I got sucked into the Dark World, and I look at the map, and there's 6 more levels. Like, I'm not even halfway done. This is the best game ever.
But
having to play through literally upside down, and like, I mean, it's broken as shit. You can't get around with that transforming into the bat and doing all the high jumps and stuff. Like, it doesn't work upside down, but it's brilliant.
But it does.
But it does work. Exactly.
And it's what's so great about it is it's something like, or at least my opinion anyway. I've tried really hard over the last couple of years to stop trying to figure everything out and just let the experience happen like it did with Link to the Past. Because you're right, it is obvious to an adult, but to the 10-year-olds that we were at the time, or 8 or 12 or however the fuck old we were when that game came out, like, you were just in the world and in the experience. You know, you weren't trying to figure the whole thing out. Be like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. And, like, predictions are fun and all of that stuff, too. But like at the same time, like just let the people who are in charge of telling the story, just let them tell the story. You know, you'll probably be happier. You know, and it's something like Symphony where you're like, man, this is really good. Oh my God, there's more. Son of a bitch. I love it.
Yeah, John really thought that Richter was the last boss of the game, and like, I thought that was just magical. That was so much fun to be around, and
it's so good. Somebody should pair some beer with that game, then write an article series on Substack about it. I don't know who would do that though. They should call it Bits and Brews, then post a link at the end of this episode. Come on, you fuckers, subscribe! God damn it, there's like 3 of you. Anyway,
so yeah, Inverted Castle, good times. John and I have continued our Castle Crashers escapade, which has been a blast, but I'm having a weird issue with the game saving.
Huh? That's something you definitely wanted to do.
Yeah, like it saves, but it doesn't save the most recent progress. Every time I reboot the game, I'm whatever like the last thing we did hasn't happened. And I'm like, I tested it after this last time we played just to see what would happen. I let it do the whole saving thing, where it says saving. I let it do that twice. I went in and out of menus so it would say that twice. I was at level 8. My character was at level 18. I closed the game after saving it twice, reopened it, and I was at level 14. I lost 4 levels.
That's
just because I closed the software. It is because like I can still access for the most, like I think the last time we opened it up, we weren't at the same like actual level in the game. Not where our characters leveling up, but like the stage in the game that we were on, we were back a stage, and like, but we had lost more levels than like we earned beating that stage. I think so. Like it was harder to get through it. Because we didn't have the abilities we had because of the leveling up that we had done. So it's starting to become a real problem. Like, I want to finish this game. It's fucking great, but why am I losing progress every time I stop playing? It's hurting me.
That's a very strange glitch.
It is, and I can't find any information on it. Nobody's talking about it. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but it's annoying. I wish it didn't happen because I love that game and I really want to finish it. We just got to like fighting aliens and stuff. We unlocked the alien hominid character, and that's weird because that character stayed unlocked, but we lost the progress.
But you lost the levels.
We lost the progress that got us to unlocking the character. So like
that's super
something's
weird.
Not right. I don't understand it, and I'm very sad.
That's not how that's supposed to be.
On the other side of the table of wonderfulness, I finished Dadish 2, which was great, and I started Dadish 3, which has also been great.
It's all great.
I'm so sad that this is the last one that exists, because like I've really been enjoying having this game. It's not mindless, but it's not involved. It's like it's really just basic platforming. Like there's just jumping. There's no attacks or anything like that. It's just jumping. It's just double jumping and getting through stages and then being met with hilarious conversations that make no sense. And it's a joy. It is just a freaking joy to play. Dadish 3 doesn't seem to have any of the issues 2 did. Like 2 would occasionally crash on me. I think I mentioned that last week.
Yeah.
3 has been stable as all heck.
That's awesome.
I met so like you're the dad of all these radishes. I met the mom
really.
in Dadish 3. Momato. And what I love about this character is that she is where the kids get their insanity from.
Nice.
Because the kids say all this weird shit to you, that's what she does. You run into her, and she's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And he's like, "It's been 2 years. What do you mean, how am I doing? Where did you go?" And she's like, "I left a note on the fridge. I had to go to work. It was 2 years." And she's like, "Yeah, whatever. So you want to jump on my back and do stuff?" It's like, what?
Wow.
She doesn't listen to you, and she just talks she lives in her own world. She's apparently like a super powerful business executive. It's hilarious. and she talks just like the kids, which is fucking great. I love it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Dadish 3 is great. I'll be sad when it's over, but I have something else to play as soon as I'm done with that, which I'll get to after I say that I also accomplished the life goal of finally beating Pictobits.
Nice.
I beat that damn Bowser level. I finally did it. God, that was so hard. It was ridiculous. And then I figured the stage after it was going to be a goddamn nightmare, but I was able to beat it in just a couple of days. It didn't take me that many tries. It was hard, but in a kind of a fun way.
Yeah.
So the way the game works is all these little block chunks fall down in like patterns, and you have to like place other colored blocks to make them into geometric shapes that'll make them disappear and send the blocks up to the top to draw the picture. So the last one is set to Toad and Mario 1, thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle.
Yeah.
But all the blocks that are falling down are spelling out, thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle. So they're all like shaped like letters, and they're really hard to manage geometric shapes because they're freaking letters, not squares and stuff. So
yeah.
But it was great. It was wonderful. The music was lovely, and I finished it, and I couldn't be happier. Art style Pictobits on 3DS. Go buy it if you have the chance. But what I'm going to be playing after I finish Dadish 3 is Pilotwings 64.
That's so exciting.
It showed up on Switch Online, and I couldn't believe how good it looks. I cannot believe they put this much effort into this game. Like, go back and do that to all the rest of them. All the rest of the 64 games. Just making it run at that effectively 60 frames per second. It's not consistently 60, but like, it is smooth.
60 enough.
It's 60 enough. And I can't believe how good it looks. And it feels like Pilotwings. I'm kind of pissed at myself for really never getting around to playing this back in the N64 days. But God, playing it, I just played the first 3 training stages because I didn't want to really get into it until I finished Dadish 3.
Right.
But having just obsessively loved the original Pilotwings and played through most of the 3DS Pilotwings, really the only reason I haven't finished playing through that one is because I didn't want it to be over. I'd play through it and be like, once I beat this, there's no more Pilotwings because they're never going to re-release 64, and I don't want to play it on an N64. So I'm probably going to go back to that one after I finish 64. But it is really, really, just like I said with Wave Race, it's reminding me of that really magical time when the N64 first launched, and it was like,
there's so much promise and excitement.
So much, right? Because these games were like, this is great. I can't wait to see what they do with this system like 5 years from now. And like,
I can't wait to see where it goes.
And it didn't, you know?
It didn't
it
go
ultimately
anywhere.
Didn't go where I wanted it to. But like, going back to Mario 64 is one thing, because I've played the beginning of that game a handful of times, and there is just an absolute magic to that game, running around in a 3D space. And the beginning of that game, I just think is great. It's just, a lot of the rest of it isn't. But I love the beginning of Mario 64. But like Wave Race 64, I put a ton of time into that game. F-Zero X was pretty great, even though that was a little bit later. But like this Pilotwings, though, the sound of this game and the look of this game just reminded me of so much of that VHS tape that they sent out to Nintendo Power subscribers that was like, this is the N64, this is the future of gaming right here. And like, God, those sounds, the way that game sounds is just pure magic to me. And there's really not much quite like Pilotwings. It's got such a great personality, and finally playing this game and listening to this music and hearing those sound effects in context was just awesome to me. And after playing those 3 levels, I loaded up a YouTube video of that VHS tape and watched it before I went to bed. It was so cool. I was so excited for N64, man. I was so excited for that system, and I loved the crap out of it for the first year. And then eventually Castlevania came out. I was like, well, I can't not play the new Castlevania game. I need a PlayStation. And then
I have to have it.
So I played Symphony of the Night, and then that led to other things like Metal Gear Solid and Soul Blade and just the wonderfulness that was PlayStation 1. And that's been my only major gripe with the way I'm playing Symphony right now, besides the fact that I had to move my mountain of a PS3 downstairs, and the fact that it sounds like a goddamn jet engine after playing the game for 5 minutes, because holy crap, PlayStation.
Yeah.
Cooling fans of death, like what the hell, man? But I was finished playing the game, and I turned off the system, and Karen was like, holy shit, was that the PlayStation? It's like,
that's what my PS4 Pro sounds like.
I remember. It was insane.
It was just absurd. Like, dude, I'm trying to listen to this shit without headphones, you dicks.
I really wanted to make it work on an actual PS1, just because every time if I'm going to play PS1 games, I want to hear that startup sound, you know? That's been like my biggest gripe. Every time PS1 games, like playing them on PS3, like as digital downloads, or even playing PS1 games on a PS2, they always go with the second half of it when the PlayStation logo appears and goes a doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
You gotta give me that whole startup screen. It's like every single time I'm just it's the best startup screen ever. It's the best thing PlayStation's ever done.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong.
It's better.
You're not entirely wrong.
There's just something so good about turning on a PlayStation 1. It's like, oh, wow. Every single time. It gets me every time. And I'm always sad when I turn on my PS3 and that doesn't happen. But
yeah.
Pilotwings 64, man. I'm so happy. I really want them to apply whatever they did to this to make this game run at that frame rate. I want them to apply it to every other game on the service.
That's kind of one of the weird things, right? Is because it is such a small number of games that they're releasing, and it's not really a ton of games that have never been available anywhere else before. Like, so you've worked on these, you've ported these, you've done certain things to them at some point. Like, just boost them a little bit. Like, because they do need it. You know, like, not the NES and the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, like, they really don't need the extra polish. But,
no,
like,
they don't.
That era of gaming, the PS1... a lot of the PS1 games and the N64 stuff, it just needs a little, you know, zhuzh in the right direction.
And it's what confuses me about the fact that they haven't retroactively added this to the other games is like, I don't know how it works. I can't. It's my understanding that this is their N64 emulator. So they're just running these through this emulator to make them work like this. So, okay, now you have Pilotwings 64.
So do that.
Working like this. Just let the emulator do the same thing to the rest of these games. Like, you don't have to up the frame rate on NES and Super NES games. It's great when you get collections like the Cowabunga collection, for example, where you remove screen flicker and slowdown. That's fantastic. But that's not nearly as necessary or as effective. And it is hugely effective, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But when you're talking about like frame rate in an N64 game, like, obviously, cleaning up the resolution is one thing to make them look sharper, but
just make it a little better.
Even without that, just the frame rate makes such a huge difference in these 3D games. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I'm watching Game Explain's side-by-side comparison on, you know, the Pilotwings running on an N64 as opposed to running on a Switch. And it is still crazy to me that this never got ported. This never made it onto a virtual console until now. It's freaking Pilotwings.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
And I've been waiting for something like that to play this game because I didn't want to go back and play it on an N64 because I don't really want to spend a ton of time in front of an N64, especially on something that I want to play with save progress. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't like doing the games that I have to, save progress on and pick back up again. Except I like doing it way more on more modern systems, because you can do things like a save state where it's like I don't have to go through and find a save point or anything like that. It's
I just
like
click a button.
Exactly. I can literally pick up exactly where I left off. That's what I want to do. And, Nintendo Switch Online lets me do that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm thrilled.
It's a great service. They've been doing really, really well with it. I want my Game Boy Advance games now. Please,
bring us Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games, because I also, since I beat Pictobits, I started playing some Donkey Kong 94 on my 3DS,
good.
Which is just one of the best games ever made, like hands down.
But man, do I want to play that on the TV?
Because that's the way I played it in the first place. I bought it with my Super Game Boy, and it has all those great Super Game Boy enhancements, including the freaking voiceover, the help, which is just like, they've re-released this game dozens of times, but never with the Super Game Boy enhancements, and that's what I want.
Yeah.
Anyway, what have you been playing?
Man, fucking nothing. That's why I let you go first. No, I mean, I've just been doing the, like I said, it's been a long week. Tiff's job has been crazy. One of the dogs that we had on hospice, Millie, she passed on Tuesday night. So like that was kind of sad, and it was like, well, I guess we're just gonna keep watching the baseball game then, and it's just been like, it's been a fucking long week. So like, it's really just been, like padding the show. The only thing I've really spent time with, just kind of randomly, out of nowhere. Oh fuck, I'm totally lying, because last weekend I played something. But the only thing I've really spent time with this week has been Tekken 2, because it just got put on the PlayStation Plus download thing, and I was like, fuck yeah, Tekken 2. I love Tekken 2. It's not Tekken 3, which is obviously my favorite, because Eddie Gordo, like, I know he's super cheap, but he's so fun to play. But man, my cousin and I we used to play the shit out of Tekken 2, and trying to get back into it and like pull off the combos with King that I used to be able to do no problem whatsoever are much more difficult now that I haven't tried to do them in 20 fucking years or whatever it's been. But man, I really love Tekken. I'm really excited for, because they showed that trailer for the new Tekken. What was that, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever, when the PlayStation showcase thing happened, and it was like, yeah, I'm ready for another Tekken. I'm in. I'm ready to do that again. But I played through, I bought, because it was on sale for like $2, $3, something like that. And I'm always looking around this time of year to play like a Halloween themed video game. Like, not just necessarily a scary game, but something that is like Halloween themed. It's one of the things that I find is super duper lacking in the video game space is holiday games, right? Like, there's not a good Christmas game. There are Christmas games. I wouldn't say that there's been a good one. Not a really good
Christmas
one,
Lemmings.
Yeah, you know how I feel about Lemmings. So I wouldn't say that there's been a good... But, like, where's my Krampus game? Something... I don't fucking know. Just give me something. Or some kind of weird Santa Claus thing, or, like, Lobo versus Santa Claus. Like, I would take that as a game. That would be awesome.
I hope they make a game out of this new David Harbour movie.
Yeah, right? Silent Night, Violent Night, or whatever the fuck it's called, or Black Christmas. I don't fucking know. Anyway,
I think it's called Violent Night. I love it.
Violent, yeah, like 100%. Give me that. Give me like a Santa Claus beat 'em up. You know what I mean? Like, just Santa Claus like making his way, trying to like reclaim Christmas from something. I don't fucking know. These are all good ideas, Chris. So somebody make them. But there is a retro styled like platform shooter called Savage Halloween, and it was fucking awesome. It was so good. And I was so pleasantly surprised. I'll be writing. That's why I wasn't thinking about it, because I'm going to write about it for Bits and Brews this week to put up. But you start the game, and like the demons and like the ghouls and goblins, the ghosts and goblins. Look at that, tying it into later on in the episode. That come out around Halloween. Don't want to go back to the like spirit world this year. They decide, fuck that and fuck you. We're gonna stay here and have a rave, and we're just gonna keep partying. And like Dracula is there, and he's like, "Fuck this, we're having a party, piss off." And you, as one of four or three different characters, sorry, one of three different characters, you can play this fucking pumpkin-headed dude. I've already forgotten their names because I'm very tired. A werewolf, or like the like Dracula's daughter character. And they all play exactly the same. Like, you run around with a gun and you shoot a bunch of stuff and you get ridiculous power-ups. One of them is a frog gun. That's awesome. It shoots frogs, and if they don't hit an enemy, they will like bounce off of a platform and like ricochet off of walls and shit. That's really fun. They all have like different specials. The game is it's very Mega Man inspired. Like, even when you beat a level, because most of the levels have like mini bosses. So you beat the mini boss, and then you immediately go on to the boss of the level. That are like cool boss designs and fun fights and whatever. And you might die once or twice, but it's not an overly hard game. But when you beat the boss, you kind of get like a Mega Man 2 style, like, jump into the air and like a little musical interlude in the way that Mega Man does. That was really cool. There are certain sections of the game where all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, a witch just picked me up, and now I'm on the back of a broomstick, and now it's a side-scrolling shooter, and that's fucking awesome. Or now I'm in a car, and it's like a driving level, and it's like a driving type shooter. And the whole thing is it's just a run-and-gun platformer. Like, straightforward run-and-gun platformer. It looks great. It's got really fucking great music. Really cool bosses. Like, it's just awesome. It was really, really good. And I think it's like $5 or something like that. And it's one of those games where I think it took me, I don't know, the first playthrough took me like an hour and a half. And now that I know what I'm doing, I feel like it's the type of game that I could put on, you know, on Halloween while I'm passing out candy, sitting in your driveway, you know, like I do. You know, like when you're sitting out there with your Switch and you're handing out candy to the kids, like, you could play through it in a sitting and have a blast with it. And it was just a really, really pleasant surprise. I was just so happy with it. Which happens so rarely. You know?
Yeah, you just kind of like, you know, with me in the first Dadish.
Yeah, the same kind of thing. Like, this looks okay. It's a couple bucks. Let me throw $1 or $2 at it, whatever.
Right, how bad could it be for this price? And then it turns out to just be, oh shit, this is great.
This is actually really awesome. I'm really happy I played this. Yeah, I was, oh man, I was so pleasantly surprised by it. Really, really loved it. Really, really recommend that everybody try and pick it up. And that's the nice thing about this game, is that it's available fucking everywhere. Like, it's on Switch, it's on PlayStation, it's on Steam, it's on Xbox, it's on literally everything.
What was the name of it again?
Savage Halloween.
Savage Halloween. Okay.
Yeah. So cool, very Mega Man inspired. Really great graphics, you know, if you're into the whole pixel art thing, which obviously we all are. A couple fun, like, little underwater sections. It's got, I believe it has, we didn't try it, but I believe it has co-op. Like couch co-op, which would be really, really fun. Yeah. It's a big clown that you fight. That's fucking awesome. It's kind of like, it's fucking weird. All the bosses are really cool. Oh, there's a fucking, there's a section where you, it's like turbo tunnel, section. Nowhere near as hard as the turbo tunnel. But, like, there is a turbo tunnel section. Like, this game is definitely an homage to tons of other games. There's one section where you're climbing up through trees, and it feels very, like, Wizards and Warriors-esque. Just really, really fucking awesome. Highly, highly recommend.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Get that shit.
Well, I mean, I guess we did it, right? Where are we at? About an hour?
Yeah,
okay.
It's not bad.
It's better than last week. Greg just, my friend Greg just texted during the first half, 2 hours and 30 minutes of lead up, 20 minutes on the main topic. That's a new record.
As an aside,
fair, who knows?
I just looked right now. Savage Halloween is $5 for Switch.
You know, if I had a spare $5, I absolutely would.
That's right.
I absolutely would.
Start selling, I don't know, underarm pics on the internet. Is that a thing?
I don't know. I'm selling boxes. That's been fun.
Just
got to sell a few more. Things will be better by the end of next week. Just got to get there is all. But
yes,
anyway,
they will.
Yeah, we're gonna take ourselves a break. That's the first half. We're gonna take ourselves a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to rank the Ghosts and Goblins series. Yeah, that's gonna go well. I feel good about it. I
do too.
Yeah. All right, you're listening to the Stone Age Gamer podcast from Geekade.com. Stick around. And now, here's a quick look at some of the other original content available now from our partners and Geekade.com. Hi everyone, Kris here. Podcast listening is free, but podcast creation is not. That's why the Geekade Patreon exists. In an effort to help us pay the bills, we've got a Patreon page set up where you can gain access to our monthly podcast topic schedule, get early access to many of our shows, and more. If you'd like to help support Geekade and keep these shows running week after week, head over to the Geekade Patreon page, linked in the show notes of this very podcast.
First up, listeners, when you think of my co-host, Kris, there's certainly a number of things that come to mind. I would argue, I would posit that chief among those things that pop to the forefront of your mind is obviously heavy metal music. It's such an intrinsic, essential part of his personality. He just fucking loves this stuff. I can't get him to shut up about it, honestly. It's a little tiring. Tiring? Whatever the fuck that is. Actually, really, while it's not usually his cup of tea, it is the preferred tea of his Turning Tracks co-host, Matt. And since it was his pick for this month's episode, the two of them spent some time listening to the sultry tones of White Zombie, just in time for Halloween. So how did it go? How did Matt narrow down White Zombie's catalog to just 10 tracks? What did Kris think of these Astro Creeps? Find out in Turning Tracks Episode 2, White Zombie. I fucking love White Zombie.
Yeah, it was a good episode. I had a lot of fun with that one. They're very good at what they do.
They are really good at what they do, and they put on an incredible live show.
I imagine
like an incredible live show.
I ran into my first instance of YouTube flat out telling me I wasn't allowed to post a video because of
oh no shit.
And it was because of the one song that Matt played that was from the Escape from LA soundtrack.
Okay.
Because all the other stuff off White Zombie's albums, they were fine. They just aren't allowed to monetize the video, which is fine. And no problem with that at all, because it's just about talking about music. But like they were like, you cannot post this with this song in it. This one from the Escape from LA soundtrack, no can do. So I muted it out and included a link to the official YouTube link for that song.
Yeah.
Which is apparently a thing. That's weird.
That's wild.
Music rights are weird. Anyway, next up, the current Castlevania collections are the stuff that dreams and or nightmares are made of, depending on if you're a Belmont or a Dracula. The D stands for Dracula. Sorry. With so many... Do you know what the D stands for? It stands for Dracula. Oh, he's not in the bus fry like he is the bus. But with so many great Castlevania games in the world, it's wonderful to have so many of its most important titles collected on all platforms for everyone to enjoy. But there's still so much more to cover. That is why I asked the question, where the heck is Castlevania Collection 3? From the series' introduction to exploratory elements in Vampire Killer for MSX to its first foray into 3D in Castlevania for Nintendo 64, there are a metric ton of Belmont-fueled adventures stranded on their original consoles. Find out how I'd handle things if I were in charge of Konami in Where the Heck is Castlevania Collection 3? Available now on the Stone Age Gamer YouTube channel.
You're not wrong. You're not
I'm
wrong
not,
for
and,
wanting
and
it.
I would do a lot. I spent way more time than I should have on this video, and I hope that it is enjoyable to people because I'm pretty happy with it. And seriously, they could make 3 more Castlevania collections, section them off in specific ways, and that even leaves out Lords of Shadow and like a couple other small things. But like, there's 3 solid collections, and reasonable ones, I think, that they could make that would make me just insanely happy. Because, damn it, I don't want to buy Castlevania Requiem. I refuse to play Symphony of the Night if I don't get, and what is a man? You know? Why would you re-record the dialogue in that game? It's perfect.
It is perfect.
Bah.
Finally, speaking of Mike Sheridan, Symphony of the Night, like most things in life, is best enjoyed under the influence. But which influence? Why, mine, of course! On an all-new Bits and Brews, I pair Konami's legendary 2D PlayStation masterpiece with a Dark Lord that's way more than a miserable little pile of secrets. Why do these work so well together? Should you use a copy of Symphony of the Night as a beer coaster? You should not. What happens when you put Symphony in a CD player? Same thing that happens to everything else. For that matter, what happens when you put a can of Dark Lord... They come in bottle. In Dark Lord in a CD player. Find out the answers. I appreciate you going with it, though. Find out the answers to some, if not all, of these questions and more in Bits and Brews 10/9/22, linked to in the show notes.
I was writing it, and I got to that point, and I thought, were they bottles or cans? I'm just too damn lazy to go back and check. Because I read the article, and then I forgot. So
it's bombers, so like they're the bigger bottles.
I don't know what that means.
They're the big bottles. They're 750
You're a big bottle.
milliliters. Yeah. Your mom's a big bottle.
Oh! For all these big bottles and more from us and our partners, be sure to keep your eyes on geekade.com. All right, everyone. We're back from break. We had an actual break. I got a new glass of water and everything. It was great.
Very sad.
So it is the Halloween season, and we're going to try to rank the Ghosts and Goblins games. This is going to be interesting. I love the Ghosts and Goblins games that I love, and the rest of them I only kind of like.
Yeah.
And there's a couple on here that I have played, I believe, everything that we are going to rank today, at least once. As far as played them significantly, that's a different animal. So take this Nah, fuck that. This is the definitive ranking. We're experts,
That's
goddammit. We know what we're talking about.
We know what we're talking about. And honestly, how dare you question us?
Seriously, I'm insulted. I'm insulted on behalf of Dan. And he's insulted on behalf of me.
That's right.
Okay, so here's the rules. We are not including the spin-offs. We're just doing the Ghosts and Goblins games. So we're not doing the Demon's Crest games, or we're not doing Maximo. We're just doing Ghosts and Goblins or Ghouls and Ghosts. Those blank and blank horror games starring Arthur and his wonderful boxer shorts. Now, we're including different versions of several of the games because they're different enough, I think, to warrant it. Whereas, like, we're not going to was it Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, like, for Switch versus it for PS4? That's ridiculous. They're the same exact thing. But back in the really old days, certain versions were pretty different. I'm excluding home computer ports, which cuts out like 3,500 releases, I think.
Yes.
There were a lot of those. Like, this came out on the ZX Spectrum, the Atari ST, the Commodore 64, pocket calculators, like, ridiculous. So we're just doing major console or handheld or arcade versions of, like, Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts. And there are two major versions of Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and then the other three ones were singular releases. So let us get to work and start with the very first game, Ghosts and Goblins, the arcade version from 1985. And as usual, I think this has to go right at the top of the list.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's not quite as good as some of the other games we've talked about, but it's also better than everything else we've talked about.
Yeah, for 100%. Hard agree. I mean, the things that we've talked about that have come before this just simply don't hold a candle to it.
They really don't. And yet they do at the same time.
And yet. No, I fucking love this game. This game is so hard. The arcade version of this game is just brutal. But what I really love about this franchise is that there's really nothing else quite like it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Not quite like it. It's, it's got some shades of, like, Mega Man. Like, it is a, walk along, shoot stuff kind of a game, but because of the horror theme and just the absurd difficulty, like and the way you get the new weapons and stuff like that, it is a pretty unique kind of thing. It does exist in its own space. Yeah. And this original arcade game is damn good. It's a damn good game. It looks great. It hates you.
Yeah, for sure.
It wants all of your money. It is unreasonable, but everything else about it comes together in a way that makes it work well enough to be infuriating, but also easily appreciated. Like, this original arcade game is just, it's hard to truly hate this game.
It's just so fun.
It is essentially a fun game, and it looks good, it sounds good, and it's got such a great personality. I love the personality setup, and this whole series has its distinct personality is what makes it so special. Like, it is such a horror trope filled thing. Yeah. Like, at first glance, but then, like, the fact that you can run around in your underwear, and then, like, how interesting the monster designs get. Like, you got your standard zombies and things like that, but
for sure,
past the zombies and the bats, you get, like, all these weird looking demons and stuff. Like, there's so much creativity on display in this game.
What I always loved about this game, specifically the arcade version, and what is the story? Because the original arcade machine was a Taito machine, right? and then the home release was Capcom, and it's been Capcom. Like,
well, it was always developed by Capcom. Capcom
always
made the game
by Capcom, but published by Taito in the States, right? Is that what it was?
Is sounding somewhat familiar to me.
Okay,
but I am not sure. Let's see. Yeah,
confused
North America.
The shit out of me when I was a kid.
That was it. In North America, Taito distributed the arcade version,
okay.
But Capcom developed it and also, published it or distributed, whatever you want to call it, everywhere else in the world. It was just in North America that Taito handled the arcade, just the, distribution of it. It was 100% a Capcom thing, developed all the way through.
Because it's such a Capcom game, too.
It's
such a fucking Capcom game.
It is one of their marquee franchises.
What always kind of blew me away about this game, this arcade version especially, was the backgrounds. I was always so impressed, like, as a kid. I just felt the world felt so... and they're not the craziest, most detailed backgrounds in the world.
Yeah, especially not in this first game. But you're 100% right, especially that first level with the trees.
There was such an atmosphere in this game. I just fucking loved it. And like it's a game that really, like, it really sucks you in. Those fucking mountains in the back of that first level. You're jumping over tombstones and there's zombies and there's just all this crazy weird shit going on. And you're right, like when I say that there's really nothing quite like this, it's such a Capcom game. It feels like Mega Man. It feels like a Capcom run and gun kind of game, but the trappings of it, the window dressing that's on it, most horror games are slower. By their very nature, they're more exploratory, more jump scares. Even looking at Castlevania before it became, Metroidvanias, the original Castlevanias are slow, they're methodical. They're action games, sure, but not like this.
They're very deliberate.
Yeah,
and they're
deliberate.
Also not as... I mean, this game was designed to eat quarters. Like, this game's difficulty is there, like, partially because they hate you, they want you to suffer, but also partially because this was just about eating quarters. But they made a game good enough that made you want to keep putting quarters into it. So
yeah, love this game.
I like it very much. On the other hand, a year later, so that was Arcade 1985. A year later, this game gets ported to the NES. Ghosts and Goblins for NES. I say goes straight to the bottom. I feel like, generally speaking, this is going to be a hard one to beat for the bottom. Because on one hand, this game has some great historical significance. I believe it was one of the first, if not the first NES game to use an individual mapper chip, for being able to do extra things. However, those extra things were basically nothing. Because the NES port of this is, well, it is not the worst thing Micronix ever did on the NES, but it is certainly not great. It's in screenshots it looks fine, but in actual gameplay it's super choppy, it's super chunky. It seems like it feels like it's going to fall apart at any minute. Like, it just feels like it's held together with copper wire and duct tape.
Yeah. I do love it though. I do. It's not good.
I don't,
comparatively
love this
speaking,
NES port.
to the other versions of it. I love it nostalgically though.
Yeah, I don't have a nostalgic connection to this one. My first experience with the franchise was the Super Ghouls and Ghosts on Super Nintendo. So,
okay,
going back and playing this NES one and thinking to myself, boy, this could have been a lot better. Like, the NES was definitely capable of doing this better. And then learning later, particularly through Jeremy Parish's NES works, like learning about Micronix and the games that they made, and then being like, yeah, that really checks out. This was totally a Micronix joint, and what the hell? Like, I've never found this version particularly fun, and just in generally speaking, to the quality of everything else that we're going to talk about, I I don't think this one's going to get topped as far as being at the bottom of the barrel. But you know what? We'll see.
Yeah.
It is it definitely does not beat its arcade counterpart. Like, I don't think that's up
definitely
for question.
not. No. In our opinion, certainly not. As much as I would like to say that it's higher than, because I've spent way more time with this version than I have the arcade version. Yeah, there's a lot broken in this game.
It just, on a technical level is just kind of meh.
Yeah.
This next one is pretty interesting, though. This is Ghosts and Goblins for Game Boy Color. What's so interesting is that this is clearly based on the Micronix NES port. Mm-hmm. Like, without a doubt. Like, the visuals are straight out of that. But it's not as choppy. So it's like a cleaned up version of the NES version of Ghosts and Goblins, but it also has the unfortunate mistake that a lot of developers made on the Game Boy, and unfortunately we're still making in the Game Boy Color era, of not adjusting the pixel resolution to fit the smaller screen. So this one has the action like incredibly zoomed in on Arthur, and it makes it difficult to see the enemies around you. So, on one hand, it is a much better running version of the NES port of Ghosts and Goblins, and also a somewhat more difficult to play artificially because of how much stuff exists off screen that can attack you.
Yeah.
So, where does it go?
I think it goes above the NES version, mostly because while you're correct in that it is more difficult technically to play because of the zoomed in nature of it, it's still a game that no matter how much of it you can see, you still have to memorize most of it. There's not a ton of reacting in this game, because if you're playing it without that kind of, just fucking drill and kill style mentality, you're just not going to make it through it for a lot of it. There are sections, right, that you can fuck up a little bit and be like, all right, I'm still okay, I can make it through here. But you kind of have to know what's coming in through that repetitive play. So whether you're doing that on the NES or the Game Boy, like you're just learning that particular version of the game. And because it does play better, it is cleaned up a little bit. I think it goes above the NES version, but not as high as the arcade, sir.
Hard agree. Well said. All right.
Okay.
I like that. Next up, we have Ghouls and Ghosts. So the Game Boy Color version was in 1999. So, whatever. I wanted to put it in with the other Ghosts and Goblins games because we were talking about those specifically already. But now back to 1988, we got the game's first actual sequel, which is Ghouls and Ghosts.
For
arcade.
Don't leave the whole thing out.
All right, yeah. Ghouls and Ghosts arcade 1988. I think this one goes up to the top of the list. I think Ghouls and Ghosts is a better game than Ghosts and Goblins.
Man, I feel like I want to disagree, but I mean, you're probably right.
I mean, this does pretty much everything the first game does, but just bigger and better. Like,
yeah,
you get the different armors in this game. You get more cooler weapons. You want to talk about cool backgrounds? The lightning happening
the backgrounds
in the background
in this are pretty dope.
The red cape on the gold armor, the magic that you can do with the gold armor, the ability to shoot up. I think this one you can shoot down too.
Yeah.
When you're jumping, you can throw downward.
I mean, because I kind of want to disagree because of the simplicity in that aspect. In one aspect, not that it's a simple game, but there was a simplicity to the run and gun nature. There wasn't as much to think about with Ghosts and Goblins, but you're right. Ghouls and Ghosts really does it's what you wanted out of a sequel. And especially at that time, it was just more of what you liked. It was just bigger and better with some added flash. It does look really fucking.
It does. It really. The first one has I love the way the first game looks, but it also it's got its issues. Where as far as the overall look of everything is Arthur's run animation's a little odd. And I really think they cleaned it up a lot for the arcade.
They did. It's still odd, but
it is still odd. But it seems to work better. It works better for me. I think that yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are the songs in the first stage different in Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts, or is it still the do 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 do?
Oh yeah, as far as I know, it's still the yeah. It's still
it's still the
theme,
same, right?
I think that's in all of them. I think that's
okay.
The first level in every single one of these games.
Okay. I thought so. I'm just double checking because that would have been enough for me to then put Ghosts and Goblins back up at the top.
Yeah.
But no, then Ghouls and Ghosts. Yeah.
All right, so then we have 1989's Sega Genesis port of Ghouls and Ghosts. This is nearly...
I didn't spend a ton of time with this.
I didn't either. This is nearly identical to the arcade game. It is a very strong port. There are a few visual things that I don't love about the Genesis version, but it is still really good. All right, it's definitely better than NES Ghosts and Goblins, and it's definitely better than Game Boy Color Ghosts and Goblins.
For sure.
My question is it as good as the arcade Ghosts and Goblins?
Oh, man, it's kind of hard because there's a certain muddiness to the Genesis version that isn't present in either of the arcade versions.
There's definitely a bit with the animations too are a little weird. The way something about the way the cape moves when you're running in the Genesis version compared to the arcade one. It's almost exactly similar, but it's ridiculous how it moves while you're running. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think I would put it below the two arcade ones.
I'm really on the fence on whether or not it still beats the first, whether or not it beats the first arcade, because it is such an impressive port of that arcade game, and it's got so much wacky shit going on.
I would put it below the arcade ports, but if you feel strongly, I wouldn't fight you.
No,
mostly because it doesn't sound as good.
I'm not going to fight you on it either.
Okay.
I think
in that case, I said it first.
I think I would put it below the arcade first Ghosts and Goblins, but just barely.
Yeah, and not by much. We're looking at 2A and 2B right now.
Yeah, it's such a close call. But there's I freaking love Ghouls and Ghosts Arcade, and I think it's just a magnificent sequel to Ghosts and Goblins. But that original arcade game, while probably ultimately not as good a game on paper, even as the Genesis one, the few weird things about the Genesis one that are just ever so slightly off from the arcade version, I think are enough to put it underneath the nostalgic connection / just ridiculous perfection of the original arcade game. It's not a perfect game, but it's this weird, perfect piece of gaming when it happened. I don't really know if I'm articulating this very well, but yeah, I think it's close.
You're putting down.
Okay, this is an interesting one. So in 1990, Ghouls and Ghosts was ported to the Master System, but it is kind of a different game. Whereas the Genesis game is a really good port of the arcade game, Master System Ghouls and Ghosts has a bunch of different stuff in it, which I didn't realize until recently. I was watching a video on this earlier that kind of compares it. Visually speaking, it's obviously nowhere near as good as the Genesis one because it's how could it be? It's the Master System.
Right.
It loses a lot in the animation department. especially on like the big bosses, they tend to like just slide back and forth instead of animating like they're walking. But this introduces an interesting progression mechanic where like when you start the game, it seems like it's running too slow, but later in the game you get power-ups that speed you up. Like you can continue to evolve Arthur's character throughout the course of the adventure through like a more permanent upgrade system. Like you can take more hits. You have like a life bar instead of just, oh no, I get hit once and now my armor's gone.
Yeah. This one definitely feels, or felt like, at the time, that it was the first one that was made specifically for the home console market. Like the first time that they sat down and thought, okay, what really differentiates Ghouls and Ghosts from an arcade style game to a console style game with the life bar, the permanent progression system. And all of that's great. I think that puts it above the Game Boy Color one, but still below the Genesis version.
I agree completely. It's very ambitious, and I appreciate that, but it is, while it's super interesting, I don't think it's ultimately as fun to play as the Genesis port of Ghouls and Ghosts. So,
right, there are some really good ideas in here that you want to see make it to later sequels and whatnot. But the execution is just, and it just by necessity has to be, right. It was an 8-bit system.
Yeah, huge E for effort here.
And still a good game. Like, don't get us wrong. Like, this is a good game that if you have not played the Master System version of Ghouls and Ghosts, which I also believe it is a wildly expensive version of this game.
I haven't checked, but I would not be surprised.
You definitely should play this version of Ghouls and Ghosts, just because of how different it is, and to see that same DNA but kind of manipulated into a home console experience.
It reminds me of like the
really
NES
cool
version of Double Dragon, where it's like, this is this arcade game, but it's also not. You know what I mean? And I do think it was handled very well on the Master System. I think that it was probably a little bit more ambitious in the visuals department than it should have been, just as far as like detail, because there's a lot of stuff in this that makes it look a bit too garish, I think. But ultimately, it is a really interesting game.
It's not as expensive as I was expecting. A loose copy is $70.
That's still pretty spicy.
It's still pretty
for a
spicy.
Master System game, yeah.
But for a relatively rare Master System game, because I don't think this, like I'm just wildly speculating here, but I can't imagine this was super duper mass produced. I mean, the Genesis was out and selling.
By 1990, I can't imagine there was a lot of these out there.
Yeah, so $70 for a loose copy isn't when we're talking about some of just the ridiculous prices that James Buster Douglas Knockout Boxing on the Master System is $350 loose. Like, go get fucked.
That's
you know what I mean?
$70
for Ghouls and Ghosts in comparison is a fucking steal.
Okay. Next up, Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the Super NES.
I mean, straight to the top?
Yeah, 100% agree.
Like, without question?
Yeah, I no arguments for me. This game's freaking great. This
game rules.
It looks and sounds better than any other Ghosts and Goblins game as far as I'm concerned. I don't even think that's personally up for debate. I know people love the way the Genesis sounds, and the arcade games also have a very unique and great sound, but God, the soundtrack in Super Ghouls and Ghosts is freaking nuts. It does have some slowdown issues, but all things considered, it makes great use of Mode 7. The Super Nintendo's power, especially considering how early this was in the Super Nintendo's life cycle.
Yeah.
It introduces the damn double jump. Oh, the double jump changes this game so much, and it's in such a good way. It does take out the the double jump comes at the sacrifice of being able to shoot your weapon straight up and down, which is kind of a weird choice. But I ultimately think that it is just an astoundingly well-made game. It's a game that I don't mind beating, you know? Most of these games, you get to that halfway point where you beat the game and they're like, all right, now go do it right. This one, like, yeah, that still sucks, but if I, like, just wait a day or two and then do it again with the goddess bracelet, it's not so bad. I freaking love Super Ghouls and Ghosts. I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I love this game. I love it. I think it's better than the arcade version.
There was no arcade version of this game.
Sorry. What I mean is, like, where the arcade games were at that point. Right.
Yeah.
Like, then getting to this is like, oh my god, this is so fucking, you know, like it's better than the arcade games. It's just such a well-made game. There's a lot of really clever bits to it. I really like the weapon choice, the range of weapons in this game. Mm-hmm. There are certainly ones that are, you know, there's a couple that aren't great, but I don't feel like there's any weapon in this game that is just dog shit. Which is not
agreed.
The
Except
same.
Except the fucking goddess bracelet, which is what you have to beat the damn game. But
well,
still.
Sure, but I mean, like, in the arcade Ghosts and Goblins or Ghouls and Ghosts or the NES or the Genesis, like, there was a weapon or two where, like, if you picked it up by accident, you were like, fuck, god damn it, all right, you know, this game's great. It's great.
I agree.
Looks great, sounds great, plays great. Yes.
Tastes great, less filling.
All of those.
Solid game. Okay. Next up, we have the Game Boy Advance version of Super Ghouls and Ghosts. So what's different about this one is that there's a mode where you can play with different branching paths, and those different paths are going to take you to levels from the Genesis game. You're going to go to levels from Ghosts and Goblins, just original Ghouls and Ghosts, peppered in with the Super Ghouls and Ghosts stages, which is
very cool.
It's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of that aspect of it. It's also got ridiculously good what's the word? Box art. Box art for this game is like really great. Really top notch.
They like decided to make Arthur awesome at this point. They were like, this guy's fucking cool. Let's do that.
This was and all the monster designs too. There's this wonderful, gorgeous painting. It's really good stuff. So it does have the intrinsic problem of being a Game Boy Advance game, as in like the screen cropping. It's not nearly as bad as like the Game Boy Color game or anything like that.
No,
but it is. The
but
screen is shaped ever so slightly different from a full screen CRT at the time. The Genesis, like the Ghosts and Goblins levels, I keep calling them Genesis levels. The Ghosts and Goblins levels look real nice on here. They stick out a little bit in terms of like overall cohesion, but it's still such a cool thing to be able to have these as alternate levels to travel to during this adventure, and then having Arthur with the double jump to play through these stages is a really cool thing.
It is.
I personally still think it doesn't top the Super NES original.
That's what I was going to say, because of the smaller screen.
The smaller screen,
I think that's really
sound...
like, for me, that's the main thing that I would say, like, that's the definitive knock against it. Like, the other things I could maybe look past, like you're about to say the sound, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could maybe look past that if the screen, if this were designed for a television experience, because of the additions that make it so cool. But that's just not the case.
Yeah, honestly, I think what puts it over for me is the sound. But like, I'm looking at a playthrough right now, and I'm reminded of the village stage, which is the first stage you can go through that I think is from the Ghosts and Goblins. the windmills look so cool on here because they're using scaling and rotation, like an actual rotation effect to have the flaming windmills spin around. But like not even the arcade game did that. But it's also bogged down by really nasty slowdown while that's happening. So like it's so damn close to being the definitive version of this game, but a couple of technical limitations I think are what really holds it back. I love the idea of this like branching path system where you get to go through these totally unique levels that aren't in the Super Nintendo game. Content wise, I do think this absolutely smashes the Super Nintendo game.
Yeah,
but it's unfortunately the execution is just barely off. And while the Super Nintendo one also has a lot of those same issues, I just personally think the Super Nintendo one feels more right.
It does play a little better.
It plays a little better. It handles its limitations, I think, better than the GBA port. So while the GBA one is far more ambitious, I don't think it tops it. I do think it has to go above the Ghouls and Ghosts arcade game. Maybe? I don't know.
I would put it right below Super Ghouls and Ghosts.
Okay. All right.
I think that feels right.
That's where my gut goes to. I wouldn't be terribly beat up if you wanted to suggest it goes under the arcade Ghouls and Ghosts, but just content wise, I do think that this is so freaking good. This Game Boy Advance port is so freaking cool. Like, it's got so much awesome and interesting stuff in it. And if it wasn't for like its technical limitations, I think this would easily top the first game. I would love to see this ported with a proper screen ratio, and have all the slowdown cleaned up. I think that would be amazing. But alas, that's not the world we live in.
Tisn't.
Okay. Next up, My Kimura for Wonder Swan, which was for the Wonder Swan from 1999, which translates to Ghosts and Goblins for Wonder Swan. This is a unique Ghosts and Goblins game. This is not a port of an existing Ghosts and Goblins game. It's all unique levels. I've played this for a couple of minutes on my Raspberry Pi, I think about a year ago.
Yeah.
Just because that's when I learned about it. I was like, oh my god, all right. This
what
is
the
interesting.
Juice?
You know, because the Wonder Swan's not really a system I have very much a personal history with. In fact, I have almost none.
Yeah.
This is a weird little game. It's pretty good. It's got some nice animations. It has a really nice
I love
look
the way
to
it looks.
Yeah.
It looks super cool.
It being black and white is a bit of a bit of a holdback, but at the same time, it's it's hard to really blame the system for that. They put some work into this. Like, they put some work into making this an interesting and unique Ghosts and Goblins game, and I really like it.
Yeah, I think I'm still kind of struggling where to put it though. Like, I'm looking at our list.
All right, definitely beats NES.
Yeah, it definitely beats the NES one. I think it beats the Game Boy Color one.
I think it does too.
I think it's kind of right there with the Master System one. I just don't know if it's better.
I think the Master System...
I don't know that it isn't.
I think the Master System version has to beat this out because this game doesn't seem to have much in the way of sound effects.
That's fair. That's fair.
And, I don't know. I want to look at a different
I'm good
version
with that.
Make sure I'm not being crazy here. Yeah, this game does not seem to have any sound effects. That's kind of a weird flaw. It doesn't. God, the Master System one doesn't exactly sound great either,
right?
Because it is still a Master System game, but it's I like how expressive this one is, but this doesn't appear to be nearly as ambitious as the Master System game. So on a technical level, this is an ultimately more attractive game, like from an art direction standpoint, even in black and white. But the music is okay, but a complete lack of sound effects really does detract from the overall experience. I think it goes under the Master System game. I think it's a really cool game, but I think just for sheer scope and ambition, I would put this just barely underneath the Master System game, but definitely above the NES and Game Boy Color games.
Yeah, that feels right.
Okay, now we get to the properly modern stuff. We have Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins for PSP.
I really liked this one.
I really like this too, but I have no idea where to put it. So, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, again, this did some really cool stuff. It did, like, the respawn, like when you die and then respawn right where you died.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really, really cool addition. They made Arthur so much more usable, so much more, offensively capable, but then they made up for that by just making the game so stupid hard.
It's really, really brutal.
I died so many times just on the first level in this game, being like, all right, I can do these different things now. Oh, but the game is just that much harder. But visually speaking, this is fantastic. They did such a great job on this game's visuals.
It's so weird, too, because I was just going to say, I kind of, I love the way this game looks, but also kind of hate it all at the same time. Like, and I don't really know why. I don't have a good explanation as to why I feel that way, because you're right, it looks so good, but I also kind of hate the way it looks.
I definitely prefer the non-polygonal look overall, but when comparing this to, like, say, Mega Man X Command Mission on PSP, I don't think it's any contest. I think this is great. This works really well. I do wish it wasn't polygonal personally, but if it's gonna be, just the exaggerated designs, like the way Arthur animates it, this is 100% a Ghosts and Goblins game. And
for sure.
All of the new stuff they added, the new abilities, they took out the double jump, which kind of sucks, but you can grab ledges, which you couldn't do in the older games. So there's a little bit more it's a little bit more malleable as far as being able to stay alive. When you upgrade your armor, when you take hits, your armor just downgrades instead of it immediately knocking you back down to your underwear. And because it is polygonal, it does add interesting animation options for a lot of the enemies. Like, there is so much good going on here. It's just a darn. It's one of my favorite.
It's really
PSP
good
games.
Yeah,
it's really freaking good.
It was really one of the reasons to have a PSP.
Exactly.
I think it also has on the back of the box one of the great slogans of all time: "Run faster, jump higher, make the dead deader." That's really good.
That is some top quality stuff right there.
So ultimately, though, I don't think you see what I did there. Ultimately, I don't think it tops the Super NES version for me.
Without a doubt, I agree. I still think Super Ghouls and Ghosts is the king of the hill for Super NES. Does this beat the Game Boy Advance version?
See, because it also suffers from some of the problems that the Game Boy Advance suffers from, with the smaller screen size. However, this
does. This has a.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I still think it's. I I want this in a TV aspect ratio. But
well, I mean, this isn't the PSP isn't an HD TV aspect ratio.
I know, but I don't like the smaller screen. I'm just being nitpicky because
but if you play this on a TV, you're not. It is. I don't like playing it on a small screen either. But the actual like view, the amount of space you have to view, isn't restricted like it is on Game Boy Advance. When I say smaller screen on Game Boy Advance, even if I blow this up on a big TV,
it's still the smaller. Yeah,
you don't have as much screen real estate. This one doesn't have that problem. This is programmed like a widescreen TV game. So when you plug your PSP into a television, it looks great.
I know, but I'm being nitpicky because we got to rank them. So
fair enough.
I think it goes above the Game Boy Advance version. I think it's underneath the Super NES version, but I think it's above the Game Boy Advance version.
I think I might have to agree with you, just because it does have some technical limitations, but none that hurt it like the Game Boy Advance one does. So while the GBA one does still have the double jump, and one of the things I desperately miss in this game is the double jump, I do think it kind of does a good enough job of making up for the lack of the double jump by just being so freaking cool.
Yeah.
So,
I think,
yeah,
and that's
ultimately
where I was going with that, is because of the screen size limitations on the Game Boy Advance. Like, yes, I understand that, plugging this into a TV, all of that. But when I'm looking at, I'm now comparing these two really good versions, different games, but, of Ghosts and Goblins, of this, franchise on a small screen. I still think because of the limitations of the Game Boy Advance, that it has to go, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins has to go up.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's close, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about this game as a TV game, which is not the way I played most of my PSP games.
Same here.
Like
that's not really an easy thing to do.
It's really not. But if I think about it strictly as a console experience on a television, I might be able to talk myself into putting it above Super Ghouls and Ghosts. So I have to think of it on that smaller scale, I think, because that's where it was designed for.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
So that just leaves the last year's Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. Now,
I, in full disclosure, have not played Resurrection. I have only watched video of Resurrection. And what I've watched, I love. I love the way this game looks. I love the character designs. I love the detail in the backgrounds. I love the way it moves. I love it.
I rather liked this game. I wound up reviewing this one for Nintendo Force, so I played through it to the best of my ability. I gave it a 7 out of 10 because it is very well executed. I was kind of on the fence with the game's art style to begin with. Mm-hmm. I think it works really well. I just think it would also have worked really well if they weren't going for that sort of puppety style animation.
Yeah.
But the actual art direction itself is extremely solid. It plays very well. It is obscenely difficult.
Yeah.
To the point where it became somewhat unfun.
Okay.
I'm rereading my review to kind of like
refamiliarize
myself with it, because God, some of the things, much like Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, seeing the kinds of things that the old games did brought to life with modern technology is like Ghosts and Goblins has so many really stark visual aspects to it. And this game really
I love the
is
boss designs in this game.
They're really good. Man, this is hard. I don't know where to put this one.
Yeah.
This does have like a multiplayer helper mode, which is pretty cool, where a second player can play as a familiar, which is nice. It does help things out. Let's see.
Is it? It's better. It's better than NES, Game Boy Color, Wonder Swan, Master System, Genesis. I think that's fair, right?
Yes, I will agree with you to that point. All right, so where are we at? We're talking the arcade games. Is it better
than the original arcade game? I think it has to be, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's an overall better game than the original arcade game.
Is it better than Ghouls and Ghosts in the arcade?
Damn.
I think it is. I think it is.
I think
again,
it is too.
I have not played it. Just watching it, I think I would put it above Ghouls and Ghosts in the arcade. Would I put it above the Game Boy Advance version? Now
this
I'm
is
not
where
so
I'm.
sure.
This is where I'm really hung up, because one of the things one of the problems I have with the Game Boy Advance game is like the aspect ratio, like how zoomed in it is. And like this game very specifically has dynamic camera stuff going on. Like
Right.
this game zooms out when it needs to and zooms in when it needs to. So like
Right.
this
Which is really cool.
Taking advantage of the fact that it's on a modern platform in a unique way. Is it ultimately as good a game as Super Ghouls and Ghosts on Game Boy Advance? That's tough, because there is so much good stuff on display in that Game Boy Advance game. But then, like, just looking at the spectacle in this game and how awesome the reimagined bosses are, and God, I'm looking at this damn dragon. This thing took me forever to get through. Like, seriously, this game was infuriating, but that's what Ghosts and Goblins is.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
just that's kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it is built into its DNA, and it was never infuriating because of a technical issue. It was always infuriating because of the way it was designed, because it was designed to kill you. Is it better than Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins for PSP?
So that's kind of where I'm at. I just don't know if it's better or worse, quote unquote, than Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the Game Boy Advance. I do not think it tops the PSP.
The PSP has, I think, better use of color. The fact that it does a lot of the same kinds of things without going into that storybook kind of art direction, I think, from a visual standpoint, and again, I think just from an ambition standpoint, I think the PSP game is a little bit more ambitious. So yeah, I think it goes under Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins. I think it beats Super Ghouls and Ghosts for Game Boy Advance only because of that game's technical problems.
Right. Again, coming down to more just the screen real estate and sizing and
slow down and things like that. But I don't think it tops Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins for PSP, which I think was really quite a magnificent game that I want an
doesn't
HD
get enough
remaster
love.
of.
Yeah, it doesn't get enough love.
It's much like Castlevania: The Adventure Rebirth. It is married to the system that it's on for really no good reason. Well, I guess this can be downloaded on certain PlayStation networks and stuff, so who knows if there's a good way to play this on a television comfortably. But either way, it's a damn PSP game, and it's freaking cool. And I think that does it. I think we did it. So
I think we
bottom
did.
to top.
Out of curiosity, out of curiosity, and you can do this before or after, where would you put the Maximo games?
I've played almost none of them. I know there's 2 of them. I've played them for maybe a total of 20 minutes, so I can't rank those. I don't know enough about them.
All right, that's fair.
Where would you put them?
I would put them... I really, really love those games. I would put them in the Resurrection area.
Okay.
Like
I've always heard they're quite good, but like,
yeah,
I played Maximo for a few minutes on like one of my store interactives back in the Game Crazy days, and like, how do you compare that to Ghosts and Goblins? It doesn't feel like it at all. It's the only connection that I saw to it was that you could run around in your underwear and you were fighting monsters. Like, from a gameplay standpoint, it didn't feel like a 3D version of Ghosts and Goblins. It felt like its own thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Which ultimately I don't think it would be the most fair comparison. But I would throw it up in that genital area, I think. And yes, I did say genital.
That you did. All right, bottom to top, we have Ghosts and Goblins for NES, Ghosts and Goblins for Game Boy Color, Micamora for WonderSwan, Ghouls and Ghosts for Master System, Ghouls and Ghosts for Genesis, Ghosts and Goblins Arcade, Ghouls and Ghosts Arcade, Super Ghouls and Ghosts Game Boy Advance, Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins for PSP, and then at the top of the list, Super Ghouls and Ghosts for Super NES. Yeah, I
still think that's the best game in the franchise. I don't think it's been topped. I don't think I really don't think anything's really quite captured the magic that particular Super Nintendo game has. I desperately want something to, because I really do love this franchise. I really do love Arthur as a character. I don't know what it would take to, like, I can't name the thing that would be like, oh yeah, this is what would put a version over Super Ghouls and Ghosts.
Agreed. I don't know what beats that, but there is a certain magic to this game that has yet to be topped.
Yeah.
All right, that does it. We did it.
Well done.
Happy Halloween.
Well
that
done,
is our show. Join us next week when we'll be tackling the October 10, 20, 30, 40, discussing games released in October 10, 20, 30, and 40 years ago, because that's what we do.
That's right.
We are on most social media platforms, and if you want to get in touch with us, we aren't very difficult to find. All it takes is a quick look at our show notes, and you'll see links to our social media accounts, as well as all manner of other fun stuff, like a link to our namesake, StoneAgeGamer.com, and more useful links than you can shake a joystick at. If you'd like to get early access to this show's episodes, as well as a bevy of other shows on the Geekade Podcast Network, check out our Patreon, also linked to in the show notes. It helps keep this show running week after week, and all our patrons are loved and appreciated. This show's theme song, Squared Roots, was written by Banjo Guy Ali. You can learn all about his wonderful music and more by following the link to his YouTube channel, also in the show notes. And finally, as always, we'd like to thank our intrepid editor, Evan, for making this show listenable for all you folks. We'd like to thank all you folks for listening in the first place. And that is it, everybody. On behalf of Dan and myself, keep playing games.